The nuns became pregnant one by one, and the revelation astonished everyone. The nuns residing in the chapel devoted their entire lives to prayer, strictly following God's commandments without any interaction with the outside world, except for approved charitable activities. Everything unfolded in a sacred manner until one fateful morning, when the true nightmare commenced. The chapel bell tolled, announcing the morning service. The nuns, dressed in plain black habits, quietly took their places in the rows of wooden pews, their eyes cast down in prayer. Mother Superior Mary positioned herself before the altar, her expression serious yet filled with love. However, just as she began to recite the prayers, a sharp gasp interrupted the silence. Sister Lucy, merely 22 years old, suddenly fell down. The whole monastery was engulfed in shock. Lucy's fellow nun, Sister Agnes, hurried forward in distress to help her. Lucy appeared pale, her breathing strained, one hand gripping her stomach as though in pain. The other nuns whispered anxiously, some hastening to seek assistance. Mother Superior Mary quickly moved forward, her face marked with concern. "Take her to the infirmary at once." Sister Anna and Sister Teresa promptly aided Lucy, leading her away while the remaining nuns murmured in apprehension. Everyone felt that something was dreadfully wrong, yet no one had the courage to voice it. Half an hour later, Dr. Raymond, the physician called by the monastery, emerged from the infirmary. He was a middle-aged doctor with extensive experience working with churches and monasteries, but today his face was pale as if he himself could hardly believe what he was about to announce. "Mother Superior Mary," Raymond hesitated before lowering his voice. "Lucy exhibits signs of pregnancy." Mary halted, saying slowly, "That's impossible," her eyes becoming icy. "No one in this monastery could have committed such a sin." "I believed so too," Raymond sighed, wiping sweat from his brow, "but the signs are irrefutable." Her belly has slightly expanded and she displays symptoms associated with pregnancy. The atmosphere in the room felt as though it had frozen. "We must examine all the nuns," Raymond continued. Mother Superior Mary remained quiet for a lengthy moment before ultimately nodding. The news regarding Lucy spread rapidly, and as the other nuns underwent examinations, the resulting discoveries were even more startling. Not just Lucy, but at least 5 other nuns displayed similar signs. Mother Superior Mary felt as if she were ensnared in a nightmare. These young, innocent nuns who had committed their lives to serving God, how could they be pregnant? No man had ever entered the monastery. This was unthinkable. Yet somehow it had transpired. Outside the monastery, rumors circulated. Some villagers whispered about unusual happenings within the monastery. Stories began to surface. Some declared that the monastery was cursed, while others, more spiteful, insinuated that the nuns had committed serious sins. The scandal soon reached the ears of Bishop Gregory. Gregory was a strong man with a stern expression and piercing gaze. He took pride in maintaining the purity and honor of the church, but he was also recognized as an unforgiving traditionalist who would tolerate no scandals. Upon receiving the news from St. Benedict Monastery, he quickly convened an emergency meeting. "This is unacceptable," his voice echoed throughout the cathedral. "We cannot permit a scandal of this nature to tarnish the church." A young priest, Father Alphonse, cautiously interjected, "But Your Excellency, we don't yet have the complete story. Perhaps there is something unusual at play here." Gregory narrowed his eyes, stating, "There is nothing unusual, only that these nuns have violated their vows." "But if they are innocent, there is no such thing," Gregory interjected. "We will go to the monastery immediately. If anyone is guilty, they will receive due punishment." Hours later, a procession of carriages arrived at St. Benedict Monastery. As Gregory and his senior clergy disembarked, the atmosphere thickened. The nuns rose in the monastery courtyard, their heads lowered in fear. Mother Superior Mary stepped forward to greet them, preserving her composed demeanor while turmoil raged inside. "Welcome, Your Excellency," she stated in a measured voice. "I trust you have come to unveil the truth." Gregory observed the group of trembling nuns, proclaiming, "The truth is already evident, Mother Mary, now only judgment remains." Within a day, news of the scandal at St. Benedict Monastery had disseminated throughout the entire region. Outside the monastery gates, people began to assemble. Initially, they only cast curious glances, but soon whispers escalated to murmurs and then to anger. "They are sinners," a man shouted. "God will punish these liars." A group of elderly women, once devout supporters of the monastery, now looked upon the nuns with disdain. "We trusted them, and now they have dishonored the Lord." The first stones were launched at the monastery gates. Mother Superior Mary stood on the balcony, looking down at the shouting crowd. She understood that the worst was yet to arrive, and this was merely the onset of the nightmare. The gates of St. Benedict Monastery remained securely shut, but outside, the crowd continued to scream. Small stones were persistently hurled against the wooden gates, creating a constant thud that was both grating and foreboding. Curses and accusations echoed endlessly. Inside, the atmosphere became even more oppressive as Bishop Gregory officially mandated the isolation of all the suspected nuns. "From this moment on, no one is permitted to leave the monastery," his voice was frigid. "We must uncover the truth." Mother Superior Mary faced the bishop, her hands tightly clutching the hem of her dark robe. "Your Excellency, I sense that something is amiss." Her voice remained serene yet firm. "We have committed no sin. My nuns could not have done this." Gregory smirked. "Impossible. Then where did these signs of pregnancy originate?" Mother Mary fell silent. For even she could not explain. It began re-examining every single one of them. Gregory turned to Dia. "Raymond, this time no one is to be overlooked." The nuns were gathered into a large hall where they were ordered to undergo medical examinations under the watchful eyes of Gregory and a group of senior priests. Some trembled, trying to pray, but were sharply commanded to remain silent. "Why must we endure this humiliation?" Sister Anna, an elderly nun, was on the verge of tears. "We are innocent." Sister Teresa grasped her hand, trying to reassure her, but no one was listening. One by one they were dragged into the examination room. The youngest nun, Sister Helen, not even 20 years old, was so terrified that she fainted when the doctor touched her hand. Sister Beatrix sobbed uncontrollably as she was interrogated about something she herself did not understand. "Speak the truth and you will be forgiven," an old priest urged. "But I have done nothing wrong," Beatrix cried. Gregory crossed his arms over his chest, observing from a distance. Every plea from the nuns only convinced him further that they were hiding something. After several hours of examination, 12 nuns were confirmed to have symptoms of pregnancy. When the news leaked outside the towns, people's rage reached its peak in front of the monastery gates. Dozens of people gathered, carrying banners with horrifying accusations. "Sinners of God, we have been deceived, betrayers of faith." Some threw rotten eggs at the gates, while others held torches threatening to set the monastery on fire. "They have defiled the church," a man roared. "Bring them out, we demand justice." Inside, the nuns huddled in the chapel, their tears falling endlessly. Mother Superior Mary stood before the statue of Christ, her heart heavy. She had tried to protect them, but now, the monastery was no longer a safe place as the mob grew more uncontrollable. Gregory made a ruthless decision if you confess things may be more lenient. He scanned the nuns with a piercing gaze. A piece of paper was placed before them. Sign this. Confess that you have sinned. Sister Isabella, a gentle and quiet nun, burst into tears. But we did nothing wrong, Gregory sighed, signaling to another priest. Anyone who refuses a sign will be permanently expelled from the church. This threat struck at the nuns' greatest fear. Some began to waver. Sister Agnes, trembling, picked up the pen, her tears staining the paper. Don't sign, Mother Superior Mary intervened, but it was too late. Some nuns, out of fear, despair, and the terror of being cast out, signed their names. The others, though yet to sign, began to fall into overwhelming panic. Night fell, but no one could sleep. The nuns were locked in their rooms, forbidden to step outside. Mother Superior Mary, who had led the monastery for over 20 years, had never felt more powerless. In the darkness she heard someone sobbing. I'm so scared. She turned around. It was Sister Helen, the youngest among them, still quaking from the events of the day. What will happen to us, Mother Mary? She whispered, her voice cracking. Mother Superior could not respond. She had no reply. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she had lost faith in justice. While the nuns were engulfed in despair, Gregory and his followers were content, everything going according to plan. Gregory smiled. Soon we will purify this monastery of deceivers. A priest beside him nodded. The public is on your side. No one believes those nuns anymore. Gregory took a sip of wine, looking out at the tightly closed monastery gates. He had seized complete control, just one more step. But even in the deepest darkness, a glimmer of hope still shone. Mother Superior Mary still had one last option left. She quietly penned a letter, carefully sealing it in an envelope before passing it to Sister Anna, the only nun still permitted to live. Take this to Father John, she whispered. Sister Anna trembled. Do you think he can aid us? Mary wasn't certain, but she had to attempt it because if she didn't, St. Benedict Monastery would be eternally marked by a sin they had never committed. Outside the monastery, the crowd surged larger by the minute. The shouts and curses never ceased. The monastery gate shook violently as if it might be torn down. Torches flared in the night, illuminating the furious faces. Meanwhile, inside the monastery, the atmosphere had never been heavier or more oppressive. The nuns were confined to their rooms, forbidden to leave. Mother Superior Mary had been stripped of her authority, and now everything was entirely in Bishop Gregory's control. The next morning, an emergency meeting was convened within the monastery grounds. Gregory occupied the central seat, surrounded by a group of senior priests, all wearing stern expressions. We cannot allow this monastery to continue bringing shame to the church, Gregory stated gravely. I propose the expulsion of all nuns who show signs of pregnancy. One priest, Father Stephen, hesitated, but could there have been an error in the diagnosis? Gregory narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased. An error. All 12 of them have the same symptoms. What further proof do you need? Father Stephen pressed his lips together, not daring to speak further. Another priest, Father Vincent, spoke up. I agree. If we don't act swiftly, the church's reputation will be destroyed. Gregory smiled in satisfaction. Then it's decided, he announced. All those guilty will be expelled. When news of this decision spread, the mob outside became even more furious. They lit candles and raised banners with terrifying messages. Messages expel them all. This monastery no longer belongs to God. They are frauds. The pounding on the gates became more violent. Inside, the nuns trembled. Some prayed in desperate whispers, while others wept silently in fear. Sister Beatrix murmured, "We're going to die here." Sister Isabella held her tightly. God will not abandon us. But even as she spoke those words, she wasn't sure if she believed them herself. That night a tragedy occurred. Sister Helen, the youngest of them all, could no longer endure the Pressure, there's nothing we can do. Her voice quivered. They're going to kill us. Sister Teresa tried to reassure her. No, we will find a way, but it was too late. Helen lunged forward and slammed her head against the stone wall, collapsing to the ground. Helen, the nun screamed, rushing to catch her. Blood trickled from Helen's forehead. Her eyes blurred. Mother Superior Mary stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Dear God, we cannot let this continue. When Gregory heard the news about Helen, he showed no sympathy. That was our choice, he said coldly. Father Alphonse, the youngest among the council, could no longer contain himself. Do you not see that something is terribly wrong? A nun took her own life because of this oppression. Gregory shot him a sharp blade-like glance. She was weak, and the weak have no place in the church. Alphonse clenched his fist, but he dared not say anything more. The nuns were locked away in isolation. Less than an hour later, a new order was issued. All the nuns showing signs of pregnancy were confined to a separate room, forbidden from communicating with anyone. The door was bolted shut. Darkness swallowed them whole. Sister Agnes whispered, "They are treating us like criminals." Sister Anna bit her lip. "We are not guilty," but no one listened. Even in such a dire situation, Mother Superior Mary refused to give up. She knew there was only one person who could help them, Father John, but how could she reach him? As night fell, she called Sister Anna. "Over, you're still allowed outside, aren't you, Anna?" Nodded. "Take this letter to Father John. Don't let anyone see you." Sister Anna took the letter, fear tightening in her chest. If she was caught, they would face severe punishment, but they had no other choice. Sister Anna slipped outside, crossing the monastery courtyard where guards patrolled the grounds. She trembled, her heart pounding. A light flickered. A priest was approaching. Anna pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. The figure passed by, unaware of her presence. She continued running, reaching the side gate, slipping through the narrow opening, and vanishing into the night. She had to find Father John, because this was their last chance to be saved. Darkness engulfed St. Benedict Monastery. The angry chants of the crowd outside still echoed through the thick stone walls, mingling with the howling wind. Fear seeped into every corner, but in a concealed corridor, Sister Anna was hurrying. She held tightly to Mother Superior Mary's letter, her heart racing. One tiny slip and she would be apprehended. Then their final hope would be vanished forever. Slipping through the side exit, she pursued the narrow path leading toward the closest village where Father John frequently visited. But just as she stepped beyond the monastery boundary, a voice called out behind her. "Where are you headed?" Sister Anna halted and looked back. A figure stood in the moonlight. Father Vincent was one of the priests on the church council. He was not as cruel as Gregory, but neither did he possess the courage to openly defy the bishop's authority. Anna swallowed hard, striving to remain composed. "I just needed some fresh air," she replied cautiously. Vincent narrowed his gaze and advanced closer. At such a time, his voice held doubt. "I think you're carrying something." Anna stepped back, clenching the letter tightly. "Please, Father, don't stop me," she implored. Vincent exhaled, locking eyes with her. For a fleeting moment his stare no longer showed doubt, only uncertainty. "You're going to see Father John, aren't you?" Anna stiffened. She couldn't deceive him. After a tense pause, Vincent abruptly turned away, his voice low. "Go." Anna was taken aback, but there was no time for inquiries. She bowed her head in appreciation, then dashed swiftly into the night. Inside the monastery, Mother Superior Mary had been entirely isolated. Her chamber was watched day and night. No one was permitted to see her. Gregory wanted her silenced because he understood she was the sole one still opposing him. Father Alphonse, the youngest priest in the council, secretly discovered a method to meet her. When he entered Mary's room, he spoke swiftly. "Mother Superior, Gregory has swayed almost the whole council. If no miracle occurs, you will be ousted from your role." Mary nodded, but her eyes remained resolute. "Have faith in the truth, Father Alphonse. Justice is not deceased yet." Alphonse pressed his lips together, as though he wished to say more, but ultimately he departed in silence. The following day, during a public assembly at the monastery, Gregory formally condemned Mary in front of all the nuns and priests standing on the raised platform. His voice was sharp as a dagger. "Mother Superior Mary's ineffective leadership has led to turmoil in this monastery." Mary was compelled to stand before everyone, but she stayed calm and composed. "I do not believe my nuns have committed any wrongdoing," she asserted firmly. Gregory sneered. "Then tell me, Mother Mary, why do they all exhibit signs of pregnancy? Can you clarify that?" Mary remained mute. She had no evidence, but she was aware something was profoundly wrong. "If you possess any honor left," Gregory continued, "you will confess your failure and depart this monastery." The nuns wept quietly, but none dared to voice the truth. Gregory had come close to achieving victory within the monastery when some nuns began to support Sister Teresa, who whispered to Sister Beatrice, "What if Bishop Gregory is correct?" Beatrice's eyes widened in shock. "What are you implying?" she asked. I mean, if some nun had broken her vows, maybe. Beatrice seized Teresa's hand firmly. Listen to me, don't allow yourself to be misled, this is not our fault. Yet, doubt had already taken root. Gregory had succeeded in his aim, he didn't require the nuns to confess, he needed them to doubt themselves. 3 days later, the church council reached its final decision. All 12 nuns were to be expelled from the monastery, never to be accepted into any religious order again. They will be cast out tomorrow, Gregory announced. Some nuns burst into tears, some prayed, but no one could alter the outcome. Mother Superior Mary shut her eyes and prayed, "Lord, please save us," but no miracle took place. In a small village 20 miles from the monastery, Father John read the letter from Mother Superior. Upon reaching the final line, his face drained of color. "My God," he whispered. Sister Anna trembled as she stood before him. "Do you believe us?" John lifted his head, his eyes focused. "I believe." He rose, determination shining in his eyes. "We must rescue them before it's too late." That night, while the nuns were secured in their rooms, the monastery gates firmly shut and Gregory indulging in his triumph, Father John departed for St. Benedict Monastery. But would he reach it in time to avert the tragedy? Dawn at St. Benedict Monastery did not bring the customary tranquility, rather, it heralded a disaster. Today was Judgment Day. 12 nuns were being forced to leave the monastery, never to return, never to gain the church's protection, and would have to confront the wrath of the outside world. They had nowhere to turn, no one to defend them, and even worse, their honor had been utterly violated. The chapel bells rang, not to summon for prayer but to declare the execution of the honor of these blameless nuns. Bishop Gregory stood at the monastery gates with hands clasped like a judge looking down upon those being escorted out. "You have betrayed God and the church," his voice resounded. "Now it is time for you to suffer the consequences." Mother Superior Mary had to witness this, unable to comprehend that the church would allow such a thing to transpire, despite her efforts to prevent this decision. Sister Beatrice wept, clutching her habit tightly. "We have done nothing wrong, please let us explain." Gregory dismissed her. "Please, you had your opportunity to confess, but you opted for defiance." He gestured, and the monastery gates swung open. A crowd had already formed outside, and as the nuns stepped beyond the gate, a storm of rage erupted. "Corrupted traitors! God has cursed you! Get out of here!" Stones were hurled. Sister Agnes threw herself in front of Sister Helen, but a rock struck her shoulder hard, causing her to collapse. Mother Superior Mary hurried forward, shielding her. "Nuns, stop, they are innocent," but no one listened. A man splashed dirty water at them, an elderly woman who once revered the monastery now spat on the ground. "I used to believe in you, but you are nothing but frauds." Sister Beatrix choked on her sobs. Looking back at the monastery, one last time they had lost everything amid the chaos, Gregory smiled. In satisfaction, he had won, he had removed those who stood in his way, proven his power and taken complete control of the monastery. Father Alphonse, the only one who dared to challenge him, stood frozen. "Do you feel no shame?" he whispered. Gregory glanced at him and scoffed. "Shame? I just saved the honor of the church." In the depths of despair, a figure appeared. In the distance, Father John had arrived. Sister Anna, who had risked everything to deliver the letter to him, pressed herself against the gate, eyes filled with hope. But would he be in time to stop this tragedy? John strode toward the crowd, but Gregory's soldiers blocked his way. "I need to speak with the bishop immediately," he demanded, but the soldiers did not move. John was stopped Right at the gate as the innocent nuns were thrown out of the monastery like criminals, 12 nuns were cast onto the streets with no one to protect them. Gregory ordered the monastery gates to be shut as if erasing their existence forever. Sister Helen trembled, her eyes filled with panic. Where will we go? Mother Superior Mary held her hand tightly, though she too was filled with uncertainty. I don't know, but I will not leave you alone. They began walking under the contemptuous gazes of the villagers. Though blocked, John did not give up. He stared intently at the tightly closed monastery gate, then turned to the soldiers. This is a mistake. His voice was low but full of authority. No one responded, but some of the soldiers began to waver. They had witnessed too much injustice, and in their hearts their faith in Gregory was no longer absolute. J.N. turned away, but his eyes burned with determination. He had a plan. Mother Superior Mary and the nuns walked for hours, no one uttering a word. When night fell, they found a small forest outside the village. We will sleep here tonight, Mary said. Sister Agnes held Sister Helen close, both shivering from the cold. Sister Beatrice looked up at the sky, silent tears streaming down her face. They had lost everything, but they still had each other. Meanwhile, inside the monastery, Gregory was confident that everything was over. He sat at his desk, pouring himself a glass of wine, savoring his victory, but he did not know that within just a few days a horrifying truth would be exposed. A cold wind swept through the forest where the 12 nuns were seeking shelter. They huddled closely, curling up underneath their light habits, but the bite of the night was nothing compared to the suffering and shame they were facing. Sister Beatrice grasped her arms, attempting to retain warmth, but her voice still quivered. We can't survive like this. Perpetually, Mother Superior Mary gazed at her nuns, whose faces that were once filled with faith were now empty, puzzled and scared. I know, she stated so gently, yet her stare remained firm. We will uncover the truth, but she also understood that without a miracle they would never get the opportunity to return to the monastery. Meanwhile, at a small church in the nearby village, Father John quickly flipped through an old medical reference. He turned the pages with great concentration. Sister Anna sat across from him, her hands tightly clenched. Have you discovered anything? John did not respond. Right away, he flipped another page, then abruptly halted. His eyes broadened. Here it is. Anna leaned in closer. What did you uncover? John tapped a section of text on the page. All the symptoms the nuns displayed are not necessarily indications of pregnancy. Anna's eyes expanded. Then what does that imply? John took a deep breath, his voice softening. They could be the outcome of an artificial hormone. Anna froze, her heart racing. Are you implying someone intentionally poisoned them? John nodded. Deliberately. We must reassess the test samples, but I suspect this is a conspiracy. That very night, Father John secretly met with a physician he trusted, Dr. Emil Grant, an honest man not under the church's influence. Emil carefully assessed the symptoms of the nuns yet again. After a moment of serious contemplation, he raised his gaze, his expression serious. You were correct, Father. These signs are not from a natural pregnancy. John felt a shiver run along his Spine. Could it be? Emil nodded. Slowly, if we analyze their blood we might discover evidence, but I require a blood sample from at least one of the nuns in the forest. Mother Superior Mary absorbed Father John's message as Sister Anna repeated them. She squinted, her heart burdened. If they had genuinely been poisoned, who had done it and for what aim? But now the most crucial thing was establishing the truth. I will go, Mary declared confidently. Sister Agnes gasped, Mother, but what if they seize you? If I don't go, we will never be justified. Father John discreetly organized for Mary to enter the village under the protection of the townspeople who still had faith in the monastery. They wrapped her in a heavy cloak, hiding her habit before departing. Mary clutched the hands of her nuns tightly. Pray for me, Sister Beatrice wailed, holding her. May God shield you, Mary nodded, then turned and stepped into the darkness at the monastery. Gregory was starting to suspect that someone was against him in secret, it appears.